Hey guys, welcome to Thrive Bites, the official podcast of Dr. Colin Zhu, aka the Chef Doc. On every episode, I talk with health and wellness experts from all over the world, such as doctors, chefs, dietitians, coaches, and many more. And I sit down with them and have casual conversations about plant-based lifestyle, how to elevate our emotional resilience, and what it really means to thrive. And I bring all of this to you. So let's get to this week's episode. Okay, guys. Well, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites. I'm your host, Colin Zhu, and thank you for listening on. Today, I have a wonderful, wonderful guest for you today. Her name is Dr. Michelle Deng. Say hi to everyone, Michelle.
Hi, everyone.
For those of you who do not know who she is a board-certified anesthesiologist and pain management physician. And what's interesting about her is she's also studied LeGras fitness. It's pronounced LeGras, right?
It's Legree. But that's a fancy way of saying it, so you can say it however you want to say it.
Legree. She's practicing Legree fitness and restorative yoga. Actually, extensive certifications in yoga. She's been a avid yogi since 2012, and she's looking for and have been able to find integrative and alternative ways to be able to help her patients in terms of pain. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. Where are you calling from?
I'm actually from Houston, Texas. So calling from Houston.
Nice. What's the weather like over there right now?
It's very erratic. It's in the 40s and very windy today. Yesterday it was beautiful, 70s and sunny. I'm sure it's going to rain tomorrow and then also be cold this weekend. So all over the place.
Nice. Well, first question to you is, I love my guests' stories and how they arrive from point A to point B. And specifically for you, what I find unique about your journey is that, you have looked other ways, in terms of improving not just pain, but your patient's health and wellness. You obviously are role modeling that very, very well. Your Instagram page is just beautiful. And I love how you incorporate these short clips of you working out and just having a fun time. And I love to hear more about what inspired you to get onto this life path of yours.
It kind of is a complicated story. So I basically, as you mentioned, went through my training, did anesthesia, then did a pain management fellowship with the thought process that I really wanted to be in the clinic. I really wanted to do procedures and help people. And along the way, when I started my practice about 8.5 years or so ago, whenever I completed my fellowship, I was thrust into this world of private practice where the expectation was about making money, writing medications, doing all these procedures. And I kept noticing that my patients were really not feeling a whole lot better. And along the way, I was going through some personal issues in my life, and I found yoga. And I found that practicing yoga helped me immensely, not only physically, but spiritually. And so that was how I discovered integrative medicine. And so from there, I did an integrative medicine fellowship and tried to incorporate integrative medicine, which is all about mind-body therapies, movement therapies, in addition to traditional medicine in order to help people feel better.
No, that's awesome. It's a very, very not just innovative, but it's a very clever way to, being able to look at the person as a whole,
Right.
As an osteopath, as a DO, we were trained to look at the person holistically, from
Right.
top to bottom, from outside to in. And integrative medicine pretty much, Andrew Weil, kind of is the forefather of that. And I know he has his, he's known globally, but I know he's
Right.
had his center in Arizona. But he does that, but just on very, very different kinds of modalities. In terms of yourself, in terms of your upbringing, like what led you into medicine? Let's go back a little bit and, what led you into medicine and how did you decide to go towards pain?
Well, so what led me to medicine, I actually wrote about this on a recent blog post of mine, and it's kind of funny just because being Asian and you're Asian American yourself, it was part of my DNA, right? I mean, like growing up, you have Asian parents who are like, you're either a doctor or a lawyer, and that's it. And so my entire entire extended family, and my parents they're all in the healthcare field. So it was sort of like it was expected for me to be somewhere in the healthcare industry. And so, by nature, I was better in science and, somewhat in math or whatever. And so, medicine, I essentially already knew I was going to do something in the medicine arena. But as far as going into pain management, it was one of those things where, I completed my anesthesia residency. I liked being in the OR, but I really missed actually being in a clinic and seeing patients and making a difference. And so that's kind of how I came about with pain management. But to answer your question and how I incorporated the integrative medicine aspect of it was I actually didn't grow up doing any type of physical activity. Like it was all about studying and making good grades. And so fitness and health and wellness was foreign to my family. And you're laughing because it's probably true. Like I think things are
true.
different.
It's true.
Right.
I know because I'm Asian, so I get this.
Exactly. And I think now, I'm stressing for my son to be more active because that wasn't really part of my childhood growing up. So it really wasn't until really after medical school, even after residency, that I actually started taking more importance with self-care and health and wellness and fitness. So.
Right. And I definitely want to talk about that in a little bit, but I totally resonate. I don't know if you saw the new recently new Netflix comedy special with Ronnie Chang. If you haven't, you need to. But there's a short bit. He's a co-anchor of the Trevor Noah show for comedy. His comedy show for news, and he's also in Crazy Rich Asians. But his bit was that talking about the exact same thing. How Asians want Americans, like traditional Asian parents, want you to be either in the medicine or a lawyer or a engineer. And when they talk about being a health professional, what's funny is that he was joking how helping people was the last reason on the list to be a doctor.
Yeah.
It's really, and I'm sure my non-Asian, audience members are going to be like, what? But it's true because, it's really about, especially for traditional, Asian parents, and especially when they immigrate to the States, it's the American dream. They want to have their children, with better opportunities than they did. And, very similar amongst other immigrants. And being a physician is really about, having more opportunities, and it was more about like prestige and status and things like that. And
Yes.
What's interesting is that he joked about how themselves, like the Asian parents, would be the last ones to visit a doctor.
Right. But it's
Right.
about bringing that honor to your family, and you have a child who is a physician. It's a great honor.
Right. Exactly. It's not really about helping people. So, but rest assured, audience members, we are actually here to help people.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, you said you didn't really touch too much about fitness and athletics and stuff like that. And I'd love to hear about, Legree, not LeGras. Like, what is that? What is that? How did that come into your life, and how are you incorporating that, to others, or is that just a personal thing?
So I started practicing Legree Fitness maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And just to give a little background, I started my yoga practice, practicing yoga about the year 2012 or so. And after that, I ended up doing my yoga teacher training in the year 2014 and did my restorative yoga certification the year after with Melissa Smith, who is amazing.
Mm,
And so the whole thought process behind doing the yoga teacher training was not only for my own personal spiritual growth, but also to be able to bring that to my patients. And so in the clinic, I do talk to my patients about certain yoga poses and the different types of yoga that they could do that may be helpful for them. So I still practice yoga, but then I wanted something a little bit more intense. And so that's how I found Legree Fitness. And so Legree Fitness was developed by a man named Sebastian Legree, who is French. And so the whole idea is it's a high intense, low impact workout on a machine called the Megaformer. So if you know or don't know, it's similar to a machine called a reformer machine, which is for Pilates, but there's
mhm,
a lot of differences. So it's not Pilates, it's Legree.
mm,
And it's a weighted machine. So they have different springs, and depending on the type of spring, it's different weights. And so you basically hold a pose under constant tension. And the whole idea is you want to work your muscles to fatigue. And it's a very intense workout for 45 minutes. And so I started doing that maybe about 3 years or so ago, and I had the opportunity to participate or get certified to teach Legree Fitness about a year and a half ago, or a year or so ago, and so I started teaching that on the weekends. So I teach it on Sundays at one of my home studios here in Houston.
oh wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And this is like a national thing, a global thing.
It's all over the world. I mean, there's a lot. The main studio is based in California, but I think they have some studios they have one in Paris, they have one in somewhere in Asia, a couple studios in Asia. So they're all over. But like I said, the main studio is in California.
California and Los Angeles or San Francisco.
I think Los Angeles.
Oh, nice. Why don't you
Yeah,
come
yeah.
and visit me?
Yeah. Well, you need to go check it out. You need to try a class.
I
Tell me
will.
how
I
you like
will.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why they have ClassPass now. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
okay, okay. So that's awesome. Because pain is a very, as you can probably say, it's a very complex, just not only specialty, but field and profession. And there's not one way to approach pain, especially pain management, right? And a
Right.
lot of people, just kind of, being a family practitioner, chronic pain is a huge thing. And obviously our narcotic epidemic, the opiate epidemic, benzodiazepines, things like that is a huge issue. So I'm really happy, and I applaud you for looking at different ways, more holistic and more, natural, ways to be able to, incorporate into your practice to be able to care for others. So, I really appreciate, what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, and to
Um,
speak to that, it is a little bit of everything, right? I mean, I was at a conference last weekend and I spoke about integrative medicine, but there were other amazing speakers there. And I think we're all kind of on the same page in the sense of we're not trying to say that we don't want to prescribe opioids or medications to help with people who have chronic pain. There is indications for it. That's why they're there. But it is about a little bit of everything, and all that can contribute to helping people feel a little bit better, because chronic pain or pain in general is such a subjective thing, and there's so many
mhm.
components that can contribute to a person's feeling of having pain.
Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thrive Bites. Let's get back to the interview.
Right, right, right. Can you give a couple of the audience members maybe, two or three common misconceptions about pain and in terms of, how you would approach it in terms of where you would go?
So, I mean, I guess one of the most common misconceptions in general when it comes to just say people who go to the doctor and because of pain, one misconception is that the doctors don't want to listen to us or they want us to suffer. I get that a lot whenever I'm trying to tell people that there are other ways to manage their pain. One of the things that I get a lot is, well, you just don't get it. You just don't understand. You just want me to suffer. And I think that's a misconception for people in general. It's not that me as a physician, it's not that I'm afraid of treating the pain. It's just that I feel that there are better ways or other ways that we can work together as a unit, like as a patient and a provider, in order to help manage the pain. So that's probably the number one thing that I get. I can't really think of another. That's like the main one.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a very subjective thing, right? So, you're having one person compared to another, and everyone's, it's a very individual experience. And, not only do you have pain on the physical level, but you also have pain on the emotional, mental level. And, it's a very complex integration and synergy,
Right.
That reinforces each other. So it's not a straightforward thing. It's not a, straightforward, silver bullet, let me just give some medications or procedures or anything like that. There's a lot of healthier options. And I think that's what you're bringing.
Right.
Going back to the fitness and the yoga teaching, what have you found over time that you have incorporated, with your patient and your patient care that the feedback that they've given you in terms of how it's helped them?
Well, I think the main thing whenever I do, and the thing about that is that you have to find the right patient, the person who is ready to make that next step, whether it's doing a yoga class or going to the gym or whatever it is. And I think the ones who are open to it and are ready to make that change in their life, because it is a lifestyle change. Those people, when they come back to see me, they just by and far just overall feel so much better. And the thing is, when it comes to chronic pain, it's a chronic thing. So on some level, you're going to have pain. The whole goal that I tell my patients is that the hope is that you'll have more good days than bad days. And so, some of those patients will come back and they say, well, I still have this pain, but it's not limiting me. I actually have a patient, and we have to look him up. He would love for me to give a shout out to him, so he has my permission. I mean, I have his permission. But so he is like 80 years old, doing ultra marathons, and he's had a couple back surgeries, and he has chronic pain, and he lives with it. But that doesn't stop him. Like he did, I think recently, a 72-hour race at like 80 something years old. He's amazing. And I tell him all the time whenever I do see him that he's such an inspiration. And I ask him if I can share his story, and he loves it. But yeah, I mean, like there are people like him and many of my other patients who still have chronic pain, but it's not limiting them because they continue to move their body.
I actually, when you said that, one of your patients, I was thinking of a patient that I recently just saw, brand new to me. Not going to give names, but he's originally from Guatemala, and his back pain journey was, incredible from, his accounts. And, he suffered an accident and since then has gone through, surgeries and different kinds of like modalities. And he still lives with extreme chronic pain. And, for him, modern medicine hasn't been able to, kind of help him in a way. And so he came to me just to establish care, and he didn't want to do anything else with the back. He didn't even want to bring it, he didn't even want to talk about it. And so I'm very, I'm always ready to be able to help him in different ways, but because it's hit him on a very emotional level, like he tells me that he gets angry really quickly, and I don't doubt him. He's turning in his chair certain ways, he's holding certain positions, and you could tell he's just very uncomfortable. And I'm just trying to put myself in his shoes on how I would be able to go through the day to day. And it is inspiring that you're talking about someone older than him. He's probably maybe 30 years older, the patient you're referring to that's doing ultra marathons. marathons. So that's very, very inspiring. So,
and to speak to that, I mean, that's the importance of something like cognitive behavioral therapy. I mean, there is such a huge emotional component to pain that, I mean, in your patient, I think would benefit greatly from some sort of like mind body type of therapy or mindfulness based stress reduction type of therapy if it's available.
Right, right. And like you said, everybody's different in terms of how they approach it and whether they're ready or not. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because once they go through the ringer that I call, the healthcare system, it's sometimes they benefit from it, sometimes they don't. And so they have their own individual experience, and sometimes they're just not ready.
Right.
So, and I think that, you, me, other healthcare providers that's listening in and, that are out there, we need to continue to offer different, solutions, and complement it and integrate it, as you have done within your practice.
Right. And something that I tell, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say real fast, something that I tell people or, healthcare providers or physicians who ask me, how do you even get started having that conversation with a patient? I tell them, sometimes it does take patience, like patience with a CE, on your part, because that patient may not be ready and they may not be ready for a long time. But I think that we should be there for them whenever they are ready and just keep asking them. I mean, not be annoying about it every visit, but just, ask them. Same thing with like trying to get a patient to quit smoking or lose some weight. Like they have to emotionally be there. And so I think, in this day and age, sometimes it's hard for us as physicians or healthcare providers to not try to rush through a visit and to get to the next visit because you're trying to see as many patients as you can and dealing with all these insurance issues and so on. And that unfortunately isn't going to go away anytime soon, I don't think. So,
right. So it's being patient yourself and being patient with the patient is paramount. And patients do understand that the healthcare setting is very fast paced, and we would like to kind of emphasize that. I would say for the majority, I don't want to generalize, but I would say for the majority, we would love to take our time, with individual, patients.
Yes.
We would love to kind of sit down, learn more, care for them more, have more time to listen and have more time to, let them know that, we don't want to rush, to the next visit. We don't want to rush to the operating room and just leave you hanging. That's not what we, signed up to do, but that's just the nature of the beast,
Right.
So I love the fact that, going more into the fitness and engaging other members of the community with fitness. How important is this? Why is this important? And, what do you see on versus an individual level versus like the pros and cons of engaging in fitness, whether it's, relation to pain, and engaging in fitness in terms of like in the community setting? Like, what are the pros and cons to that? And, why and how is that important?
Well, personally for me, the reason why I teach fitness, the reason why I try to get other women in the community involved, or my family, my friends involved with all this fitness, is because I think it's so important. And for me, it gives me a balance because, I work, my full-time job is as a pain management physician, but I get really burnt out if I don't have anything to balance me, and fitness balances me. And I love the joy that I can bring to my friends whenever I challenge them in a class and they're dying of sweat, and afterwards they're just like, oh my God, that was so awful, but we love you. I mean, that just like inspires me so much. And so I want to be a source of inspiration for others because I feel like I'm pretty normal. I'm not like, I don't have a 12 pack or anything like that, nowhere close. I'm not super cut or anything. But I mean, I feel good and I feel happy whenever I do work out. And I love it whenever, my husband goes for a run or my friends come to my classes. I make my husband come to my class. We make our son like go run and go mountain biking. I mean, I think that is so important. And I want to teach that to my kids. And because like I said earlier, I didn't really have that growing up. And even now, every time I tell my parents I'm going to go work out, they're just like, okay. like, I mean, they're a little bit more active now, more so than when I was a child. They go walking on the treadmill and that sort of thing. My mom has a little stationary bike that she uses, and she's very happy about that. But at the same time, when I tell them I'm going to go teach or I'm going to go do this, they just kind of give me this almost like look like, okay, it just seems like a waste of time. So I mean, I want to teach my kids healthy a healthy lifestyle, and I want to bring that to my friends and family and to the community as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important. I think one of the points I wanted to make was when you're engaging in, fitness, whether it's personally or you're with the community, I think on the individual levels, you can work out on your own, right? You could do it at home. You could, and what I find, I'm not a big fan of gyms, with like machines and things like that. I've always felt like I was just born outdoors, and I have a huge affinity to water. I scuba dive, I do triathlon, so I love being outdoors, right? And so everyone's different, right? But what I find is that when you are working by yourself versus in a community, I started CrossFit, last year in the middle of the year, and what I've noticed with that is that you have a commonality, of coming together, and everyone's fitness goal is different, but the commonality is that you're trying to improve, whether you're bodybuilding, whether you're just toning up, whether you want to keep your heart, your ticker in place, whether you want to, maintain, muscle, prevent atrophy, whatever the case may be. You have that commonality. And the thing is that you have that shared bond in a community where you're engaging in others. So, I mean, I don't know if you find this or not, but like in terms of your pain, patients, do you teach them individually, or you teach them in a class, right?
No. So it's two separate things. So I teach at the studio, I teach for the community. And for my pain patients, I don't necessarily teach them, just because I keep them kind of separate. So, I mean, I do have studios that I will refer my patients to, but I currently don't teach any yoga at this time. But I will, if I have the patients who are into yoga or who do take yoga classes, I'll tell them different moves that they can do, different asanas that can help improve their back pain. So it's just two separate things. Yeah.
Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thrive Bites. Let's get back to the interview.
I would imagine if you are able to insert, and maybe this might be a future venture for you, but if you're able to insert, pain patients in a classroom together and have them work together as a group, I think they will be less alone, so to speak. I used to work at the VA when I was doing my locum tenens or traveling physician job, and I worked in the VA, and I've probably seen almost every veteran from every war. And there was this one particular patient that stuck out to me, and he was, having chronic back pain, shoulder, neck. And he was talking about, similar to you were talking about before, how he really, at times he just didn't want to live. And at times, he would just find it difficult. He didn't really have any family. He had a dog. He lives in a trailer home. And, I just kind of heard his story, and instead of brushing him off, like, some doctors would, because people are just hurting and just complaining about pain. I was able to, kind of maintain him on a very, very, very low strength pain medication, just so he could function better, right? And I'm sure you can relate to this, where he can just, just able to kind of get up and, do an exercise routine and whatnot. And he actually does do his own version of yoga and calisthenics in the morning. And I remember distinctively that he wrote me a letter. He actually hand wrote this.
People do that these days.
Yeah, I know, right? I actually put that story in my book. And he wrote that there were so many days that I, was not going to live. And the fact that you sat down and listened and, just heard my cries for help, that I really, he wrote saying that he wanted to thank me. And so, to add to what you do, I can only imagine, because, that's your life's work, right? You're just constantly, inundated sometimes,
right.
With people's stories and stuff. So I guess a question off of this is, how do you keep yourself, I don't know if sane is the correct word, but how do you keep yourself like level in terms of, these stories? Because I can relate on how certain stories could just pull you and, pull you down, and and if you're not careful, it's like you'll just be sucked into like a rabbit's hole,
Yeah, and definitely there are days where I am so emotionally drained, especially if I've had a super long clinic day and every patient has just been very emotionally draining or upset with me because I haven't fixed them or cured them or rid them of pain. So it does get to be a lot. And I think that's why fitness is so important to me, because I think without that, I probably would have left medicine. And I laugh, but it's true. The time that I found yoga, like I mentioned before, I had a lot going on in my life, but I also, once I started practicing regularly, I was working in a hospital-based system and very burnt out, just because at that time I was seeing patients in the hospital as well as in my clinic, and I had no balance. And so, to me, after a day of work or, on the weekends when I would practice yoga, that was when, to speak to what you're saying before about the community, that was when I would find that was my home. I had a home yoga studio at that time, or a home studio where I went all the time. I had a community there. I had yoga friends there who became my real life friends, that was my home. And that was where I de-stressed. And there were times when I was so wound up inside because of everything that was going on and because of my work, that in Shavasana, where we lay in our corpse pose at the end of the yoga class, I would lay there and I'd want to cry. And so that's not an uncommon thing, by the way, just having that emotional release in Shavasana. So yeah, I mean, that's really how I found my balance, is through fitness and through finding that community outside of work, outside of my family as well.
What are some common fitness misconceptions you would say that you would get a lot? You being a teacher yourself, could either, it doesn't have to be in degree, or yoga's more commonly, I don't know if it's more commonly practiced, but yoga is more, people do yoga a lot. What are some common misconceptions that people come up to you, or that you come across?
The number one thing, and I'm laughing because I hear it all the time, that I'm too inflexible, so I can't do yoga. Or same thing for Legree. I never do Pilates. I have a weak core, therefore I should not do Legree or Pilates. I mean, those are the reasons why you should. So that is the number one thing, is I'm too inflexible. So I just won't even try. Right. Or the other thing, especially with yoga, is that yoga is too boring. I have never personally taken a yoga class that I felt was boring. There are always so many different types of yoga styles. So if like a slow flow or a hatha flow is too boring, definitely try something really high intense. Heated Baptiste flow or some sort of flow is going to be super hard and fast. So those are probably the two main ones: inflexible and boring.
Yeah, I mean, I've done yoga sporadically over the years, which I definitely want to get more of, especially evening out my cross training. But yeah, I've never been in a yoga class where you're not I don't know how you can be bored because you're engaged, right? And you're constantly need to move your body in so many positions that sometimes you don't even know it could be possible you can move your body in those positions. So yeah, I'm kind of flabbergasted in terms of how it can be boring.
So that means after this, you're going to do a yoga class and a Legree class, right?
Yes. Or maybe you can actually just guest teach, come over here and guest teach, here in Los Angeles.
That'd be awesome. We love LA.
I'll come gather some people and be like, hey, Michelle's coming down. So
that'd be awesome.
I definitely want to close out. I think this has been great. I personally love listening to how my guests thrive. And obviously, we've heard your story. We, learned about the ins and outs. I want to learn, other ways, how else you personally thrive on an individual level, whether, like what gets you up in the morning, what pushes you, to keep, going, what fuels that fire. And I actually would love for you to speak after you're done with that, to give kind of a few tips in terms of finding balance, because you talked about, why you started yoga or around that time where, you didn't have that balance. And I think that's very, very important nowadays in our society, because we just love to be busy. I don't know if we're actually productive, but we just love to be busy. And, I would love for you to speak on that and give some tips for the audience members.
So to answer your question about what keeps me going or what gets me going, I mean, definitely having a family and having people depend on you and rely on you is what keeps me going. I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old. He's going to be 11. And actually I told him this morning when I was taking him to school that I was going to do a podcast, and I told him about another podcast I was doing, and he was so excited when I told him in my previous podcast that I had kind of mentioned having a kid or whatever, and so he was like, I want to hear where you mentioned me, and I don't know exactly where in the podcast I mentioned him, so he would be thrilled to hear, and his name is Colin too, which we talked about earlier, so and so
go Colin.
Hi Colin.
Hi Colin, how you doing? This is the other Colin.
Exactly. So Colin, he's turning 11. He's starting middle school this fall. So that'll be a big transition. So having a kid and having a family, my husband is amazing. He's a big supporter of me. So having them on my side really keeps me going and gets me inspired to try to find other things that I can do that, that I'm passionate about. And so fitness and health and wellness, they're all definitely things that I'm passionate about, but also, like I mentioned earlier, it helps to balance me. So, I mean, this applies to anyone, not just people in the healthcare field. It's finding the right thing for you and starting one step at a time. For me, it wasn't like I just all of a sudden one day went from not doing any type of fitness related thing to doing yoga and Legree and Pilates and all the stuff that I do. It was a process for me and finding the things that worked for me. Like, you said you did CrossFit. So, I mean, it was kind of like exploring those options and seeing what works best for you, what you enjoy, what you're passionate about, because you're not going to keep up with things that you're not passionate about doing. Like I don't really like running. And so that's one of those things where, I mean, I do run, but I hate doing it. So that's like I fall off the wagon with that all the time, even though I know that it's good for me and so on. So I'm not really super passionate about that aspect, but there are other things related to fitness that I'm passionate about, and I explore that, and I do a little bit of everything. So my advice is, find something that you think that you may like or you want to try, and just give it a try. I mean, it may be one of those things where you have to kind of try a couple times before you discover that you really like it and you're passionate about. But I mean, don't overload yourself, because then that gets your balance all out of whack as well, And so, I mean, that's what I tell my patients too, the ones who are very sedentary, who don't do any type of activity. I've always been taught by one of my attendings in fellowship just to tell them to do a little bit at a time. And so work your way up. So if it's just from your house, the door of their house to your mailbox, if that's all that you can do, then do that, and then do a little bit more the next day. So it's kind of like that with, fitness related or whatever it is, cooking, or, I mean, it could apply to anything in your life.
Right. And one of my favorite quotes about, from Tony Robbins is the key or the secret to happiness is progress.
Right.
And it's really, and we've talked about this on another episode with another guest. It's not really about seeking perfection. Society and how everything is portrayed in our world, it's a huge impact. It's a huge influence and affects our, daily routines, how we think about things, but it's not everything, you know what I'm saying? So it's not about perfection. It's not seeking that. It's really about optimizing and being the best version of yourself. And I know that sounds, more of a cliche, but it's true. What we're emphasizing is just small steps, making that progress, be better than yesterday, be better than, 5 minutes ago, and you can change all these different things in a moment of time. So it's, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. For our audience members that want to learn more about you or, want to look you up, where can they find you?
So I'm pretty active on social media. I have a website. It's michelledengmd.com, and I post blogs and different things on my website. But I'm also pretty active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is the same. It's Michelle Deng MD. And so I love getting comments from people, especially people who have heard me talk or, listen to me speak, sending me messages. It's always nice to know that something that you said made an impact. I'm also, and I think I mentioned this to you previously, I'm putting together our very first Women's Health Conference in May in Houston. So it's called Wishwell, and I'm super excited about it. I have two other amazing women helping me plan it, Dr. Heather Colementor and Emmeline Stout. And so the conference is Wishwell, so it stands for Women's Integrative Summit on Health and Wellness. And it's our first event, so we're super excited. It's going to be May 16th, 2020 in Houston. And we coincided it with Women's Health Week. And so we have some speakers lined up, and we're still in the planning process, but it's our first event, so we're super excited about it. So we do have an Instagram page for that as well. It's wishwell.health. But all those other ways you can contact me, like I said, I love getting comments from people. So
Yeah. And we'll definitely send a link out to the show notes. And when in May is it coming out again?
May 16th.
May 16th. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Michelle, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And I know the audience members will greatly benefit from, your story and your tips of wisdom. So thank you again for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening on. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Hey guys, that was another episode of Thrive Bites. If you like that episode, please subscribe and follow for new episodes. And don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts.